Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the GI Joe comics podcast. Now, today we will be privileged by talking to not just one person from the GI Joe Real American Hero comic, but two, because we have the privilege of being joined by Chris Mooneyham and Diana Davis. But I will not be talking to those people alone, because, as normal, I will be joined by my regular co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello to our guests. Let's bring them in right now.
So, first up, how can I make a choice between these two? First up, we are joined by artist Chris Mooneyham. Hiya, Chris.
How you doing?
Good. So good of you to join us. And let's not leave too big a gap in between. We are also joined by creative consultant Diana Davis. Hiya, Diana.
Hiya.
So here is my preamble. Chris Mooneyham is a graduate of the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning and Graphic Art, and the artist for Five Ghosts at Image, Nightwing at DC, Predator vs. Judge Dredd vs. Aliens at Dark Horse and IDW, Scream, The Curse of Carnage at Marvel, and more. But most importantly, he launched GI Joe, A Real American Hero at Skybound with two critically acclaimed runs. So it is wonderful to finally have you on with us, Chris.
Thanks for having me here.
Indeed, we have this big list of names, people who are making this comic, and most of them have been checked off, and we are happy to check off your name and talk with you about your work and this work. Chris, I'm outside of Boston, and Mark, where are you?
I'm on the south coast of England.
Diana, where are you? And Chris, roughly, where are you?
I'm in North Hollywood, California, right next to the, well, not right next to, but right near that crazy circus liquor sign that you see in some movies. That's how you can navigate to my house. Look, it's that weird, creepy clown from, I forgot the movie it was in. It was in a couple of them. But that's near where I live.
And I am in Wisconsin, about 20 minutes, half an hour south of Green Bay.
Cool.
So right on the coast of Lake Michigan.
Chris, did you have a relationship with GI Joe before you were drawing it?
I did not. My childhood was like right after like the hype of that and like Masters of the Universe and all that stuff. So I came in sort of at I'm not going to say tail end because obviously, GI Joe. When I think GI Joe, I think of all of the 80s, right? At least.
Mm-hmm.
But I was born in 85, so it was already going for I don't know how many years. I know the comics started in what, 82?
Yeah.
82.
Yeah.
So already, by the time I was coherent, it had already been a thing, and it wasn't as flashy to me as, Superman or Batman and whatnot. So
Are those the things that were grabbing you as a kid? It was not Turtles or
yeah,
Power
Turtles
Rangers?
Turtles wasn't one, Power Rangers wasn't one. It was mostly like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, stuff that had movies and cartoons to relate. I know that obviously GI Joe had the cartoon, but
Well, you had Batman the Animated Series right around the right time for you to
yeah,
get into.
Mhm.
yeah,
It's hard to ignore that show.
yeah.
I taped
But
every single episode on VHS as it
oh
turned
yeah,
out.
it's great stuff. I'm actually in a rewatch of that, and I'm just drooling every time one of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
one of those episodes comes on. But really, it was just a little too early for me.
So you
Mhm.
knew of it, but you didn't like have one of the toys or catch one of the episodes. Like basically
You know,
nothing.
I know that my older brother was into the toys. I don't know that he was into the cartoon or the comics. So we had some like hand-me-down random pieces of toys and whatnot, but nothing that I can
Mm.
really recall specifically.
Mm. And was there any lumps of plastic that particularly caught your attention? Because yeah, well, like sort of X-Men and Batman animated series, all massive in terms of TV shows. They didn't necessarily have great toys immediately at that, at that point in time.
No, but the Batman Returns stuff did.
Uh-huh.
There was there was a lot of that in my house.
Right.
So that was mostly that. Maybe some leftover superpowers stuff. I recall my mom talks about going on a hunt for that superpowers Superman toy, and it was very
Uh-huh.
hard to find. But
No, I was thinking you mean the little punchy jet?
no, not the vehicle, the actual figure.
Oh, Superman guy, yeah.
I think you could squeeze their legs together and they would like punch and that kind of thing, right?
His arms would fly up so he could look like he was flying, because apparently it was too hard to just move the arms yourselves. So there was a lot of that sort of stuff. I think the Secret Wars line from
Right.
Marvel, we had. I remember having some Spider-Man, regular Spider-Man, and the black suit Spider-Man, the symbiote.
Hmm.
And then also, we had quite a few Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves figures at the time, because that was big when I was a kid, and me and my brother would play with those. So we had a lot of toys. We just didn't have the same kind of toys, you know.
I think in the letter that you wrote in the back of one of the GI Joe issues, it might have been issue 302, maybe. You talked about growing up on army bases. Am I remembering that right?
Not necessarily growing up on them. My dad would take us to the naval exchange like every weekend for haircuts and whatever. My dad was in the Navy,
Right.
and we were in San Diego at the time. And yeah, I remember every weekend, get up, we're going to the exchange, get a haircut, and we would spend a little bit of time there. I don't really remember much beyond that. I remember being in a few buildings, and he was an oral surgeon and naval corpsman during Vietnam. So I remember like medical facilities, but I don't remember like actual what you think of when you go to a naval base, you know?
Hmm.
Chris, were you reading comics as a kid? Where did you get them, or what comics were you first reading?
I really couldn't tell. I know that we had some, like as a young kid. I know that I had a few, but I didn't really start really getting into comics until adolescence, like a little like pre-puberty era. And then by then it was like the subscription stuff, like the mail-in subscription stuff. And I had Spider-Man 2099 and Uncanny X-Men, John Romita Jr.'s run on Uncanny X-Men in the 90s. Stuff like that. So it was kind of random stuff, but it did form, you know, some lifelong loves.
And was there a particular event or thing that inspired you to want to pursue drawing comics yourself?
Well, I was always drawing, instead of doing homework and all that stuff.
Right.
And the teachers would always tell my parents how detailed and remarkable, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I just kept doing it and doing it. And it was like an escape for me. Um, Escape from what? I don't know. But I just enjoyed doing it. It wasn't until, maybe right after high school that I was like, you know what? This is kind of one of the only things I'm good at. I wonder what it takes to get into this. So I remember seeing those ads for the Kubert School in comics, and checked it out. Did a correspondence course that they offered.
Which one? Graphic storytelling?
No, it was the penciling one, I believe.
And it came with a VHS tape?
It was DVD at this point.
Okay.
So
And you mailed in your pages and then got rounds of feedback.
right. I actually only did the first assignment, and I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather just go to the actual school.
Right.
So I think when was that? 2007 I was there from 2007 to 2010.
You did all 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
How how are the 3 years different from each other?
First and foremost, the class size. It started off large, and then as the years went on, it just one by one they kept leaving, or students kept
Hmm.
leaving, and by the end of it, I think there were only maybe 14 of us left out of
Wow.
I think it was 30 or 40. Maybe that's too much. I'm not too sure, but it dwindled down quite a bit throughout those 3 years.
And this is not because people are leaving early because they're getting work. It's because people are leaving because they don't want to stay or it's very hard, right?
Right, right. There's a preconceived notion going into that. It's like, oh, it's drawing, it's comics, it's fun, it's easy. It'll get my parents off my back for going to school and doing something with my life. And then they get there and, you know, it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard. So a lot of people couldn't handle it. I mean, good on them. Good on them for realizing early before wasting money, you know. But
Yeah, it takes a lot of guts actually to admit this isn't working.
yeah, yeah, it's not it's
Just
not for
because
me. So
yeah,
find something else.
right. Just because you invested a year into something doesn't mean you have to stick it out to all three if it's not a fit.
Right, right. And I think the big thing is that that's where you realize whether or not you really love doing it or you
Hmm.
really just like being a fan of it.
Mm.
So,
Is there a particular, do you have a favorite teacher or a favorite assignment that you think back on sometimes?
um, I mean, I can call out some of the assignments that I enjoyed working on. I don't know about favorite assignment. Maybe third year with Joe Kubert. We had to do a crucifixion 5-page thing, but it was just the idea of a crucifixion. You had to follow certain, points, but it didn't have to be like Jesus Christ or anything. You could sort of do whatever you wanted. And that one sticks out to me because I was finally starting to find something in myself, as far as style goes and what I wanted to do. So that one,
Hmm.
that one sticks out.
Didn't have any script or anything? You just had a basic idea of crucifixion, and then you got to put your. How did that work?
Well, the way Joe would do it, from what I remember, is he would, you know, we would have a set number of pages, and he would just say, page one has to have this, page two has to have this, and so on and so forth. But the details themselves were pretty much up to you, and the storytelling was up to you, and the characters were up to you. So it was pretty open ended. All the assignments were pretty much like that, where they let you be creative. I mean, they
Hmm.
encouraged creativity there. It's kind of like, working off a script in the actual
Right.
profession, where it's like, yeah, this is the thing, but you're bringing your own thing to it. So,
Yeah, it's even closer to working with Larry, who starts with the plot first, and you just.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I
And
thought.
that's I,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I appreciate Larry's scripts or plots, because they are very open, and it does let me play around with stuff.
Yeah. Well, you stepped into that and hit the ground running with that, so it's from that past experience. You're ready to go with it.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
You spoke about Joe Kubert being one of your teachers. There was Andy Kubert. Was he also at the school at that point in time?
Yeah, both or all three of them were
Uh huh.
Adam, Andy, and Joe. I did not have Adam. Adam taught first year narrative, but because our class was so big that first year, they had to sort of split things up. So I did not have him that first year, but I did have Andy for narrative the second year, and then Joe for the third year. And we were one of the last classes to have him. Not like super close, but within like 5 years, maybe, I think.
When you finished, were there portfolio reviews? Did publishers go to Dover? Did you go to New York? Did
Yeah, both actually. Marvel, CB Cebulski and Nick Lowe came out to Dover in that third year and did some portfolio reviews. And then that same year, we took a trip to New York to the DC offices and did some portfolio reviews there. I remember Mark Chiarello looking at my stuff. I don't remember who else looked at my stuff, if anybody, but definitely Mark Chiarello did.
And I've heard you speak about. I don't. I think you might have only done one podcast before. I certainly could only find one when you were talking about working on Planet of the Apes in 2018.
Oh man, yeah.
So this is to emphasize for the listeners, this is a rare treat.
I'm a shy guy. I'm a shy private guy.
But you talked about one of the lessons from Joe Kubert being to add a money shot to each page. And that's something I can see a little bit in the Joe work, that each page has got something that really draws your eye to it and, makes it not just a page of storytelling, but also a kind of distinct piece of art in its own right that you would want to kind of, or is worthy of taking and framing as a distinct piece of art. Can you maybe talk about that aspect and some of the other lessons maybe that you took away from that time?
Well, honestly, I don't recall saying that, but if it's recorded, then I guess I did. And I do subscribe to it. I don't know that I necessarily got that from Joe, but I might have. But yeah, I think that, not every page can be a winner, but if you can do at least one good thing on a page, I think you've done your job artistically. But obviously, first and foremost is storytelling. You want to get the story across, and that's really all that matters. Everything else is, ancillary. So
Mm.
if I can, I'll try to get a cool shot or a good big base or something. But ultimately, it's more about just getting the story out and as clear as you can. And on a book like GI Joe, that is tough. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what goes into starting an issue? Because you get a plot, and
Right.
Hama's calling out for certain things, but he's
Right.
also giving you some room, and then
Right.
Diana is providing certain things. So, what's the first thing you do when you get a plot? What are you looking for? What are you gathering?
First thing I do is just read it. Just read it, understand what's going on, and sort of absorb the story. And I'll read it a couple times, actually. And then that's when I start panicking and email Diana about getting me as much reference as she possibly can. And then after I've absorbed the story for a little bit, that's when I'll start, laying things out, thumbnailing things, and um, sometimes it takes a little while. And sometimes by the time I get to the actual page, I still don't know what I'm doing. And I'm a slow artist. I'm slow, unfortunately. I wish I was quick, but I'm not. And this book is so involved that I think it's made me even slower somehow. And I'm a perfectionist to a point. So I try to make I don't follow my own advice, and I try to make every page that awesome page. So I basically just, absorb the plot for a couple days and sort of just let it stew. And then, randomly I'll be doing something else, and all of a sudden I'll have an idea of what I want to do for a specific scene or a specific panel or what that money shot on a certain page is going to be. On the rare occasion that I am functioning properly, I will jot down little ideas or little thumbnails as I'm reading the script. But I don't really like doing that because I'm somebody who needs the whole thing before I can get started. I need to know where it's going before I can actually start on something. Just in case there are, narrative elements that need to be addressed later, right? Like foreshadowing or something like that. No, I want to have that stuff in mind when I'm actually plotting things out. So
I think it was in the back of was it in the back of 302, I think, that showed some of your sketches of your designs of like Alpha 001 with the kind of the slug tail and some character studies and that kind of thing. Is there much of that where you're sort of doing the thinking, the sketching, the designing, which we don't actually see, which we don't have visibility. So it's planning it out.
um, I think Alpha 001 is a specific case because, to the best of my knowledge, there are no toys or anything of that,
No,
right?
no,
No.
correct.
So that's one of the rarities where I got to actually redesign something, or so I don't play around with that a whole lot. I guess Serpentor Khan or Serpentor
Hmm.
Khan, I got to play with a little bit.
Yeah.
But as far as like designing stuff, there's not really a whole lot of opportunity other than just sort of bringing my own flair to something.
You did that redesign for Cobra Commander's sort of soft
Oh yeah,
at
yeah.
home mask.
Oh
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. Every once in a while, there are things that I can play with, and Alex has been very cool with just ask if you want, and so far I just haven't had the necessity or desire to redesign a bunch of stuff. So, but I will if I haven't drawn the character before, I'll do some sketches just to get a handle on it. I think who's the one? Mainframe? Is it Mainframe? If
Hmm.
you notice on there, like with him. So and that was early. That was early enough to the point where I didn't know how. Um, I didn't.
I think what you're talking about is when it was the wrong mainframe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Or
This,
something like
this,
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this is why this book is so hard to draw, because not only are there tons of characters, there's also tons of variations within the toy line,
Yeah.
but there's the non-ARAH comics where they've just sort of redesigned the characters.
Right.
And if you're
Right.
coming in and looking for reference and you type in mainframe, you might see a completely different mainframe.
Yep.
And without knowing the background of the characters or the book, you wouldn't know that it was the wrong mainframe. So yeah, that was an early interesting thing that just sort of illustrated how tough this book is to draw for someone who didn't grow up with the characters.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a learning curve. And beyond that, it's like I didn't realize what Joe fans like expected. I didn't really know how much I could play with stuff. I still don't really. Um, but I have a better handle on it now. But if you look at mainframing as like the first appearance where I draw him, he doesn't look right, you know. Uh, Eventually, I think I sort of got it down a little bit, but it takes some getting used to.
Hmm.
But Diana's right. I mean, there are so many different versions that I think that was when I decided that I'm not looking this stuff up on my own. I don't know what's what. So I put all that on Diana. She's the one that gives me what I need.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Chris, this book is not a combat book, but it is an action comic. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a war comic, although it's got a little bit of that. And I'm thinking of books you've drawn previously, and also sort of by volume what comics are. Comics tend to be mostly superhero,
Yeah.
fantasy, and sci-fi. Can
Yeah.
you talk about sort of what you want out of a comics job, or maybe what you want out of a comics career? Because you have drawn certain things, and you're drawing a very particular book. Like, have you been looking for an action comic? Do you like drawing, tanks and weapons?
Oh, no. Um, it's hard. It's that's I think that's some of my weakest area as far as like man, I don't really know how to explain it. It's not something that I'm naturally good at, so I have to work really hard at getting that stuff right, and it's very time consuming. And while I'm happy with the result, I'm much more comfortable doing organic stuff. If I could do you know, if westerns were still popular, I would love to do a western or, Alien World or something like that. But, this is what I'm hired for these days. This is the sort of stuff since I did I don't know, I think an Unknown Soldier thing. It feels like I'm a war guy now, and that's cool. That's cool. War comics are awesome. I love Sergeant Rock, so I'm cool with that. I'm just it's hard. It's hard for me because got to get perspective right. Got to get all the straight lines and angles and all that stuff, all that fun stuff. Doesn't come naturally to me. I have to work pretty hard at that. So, like, it's not that sort of stuff is not fun for me. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that I would avoid it, but it's not my go-to. Let's say.
Now that you have been drawing GI Joe, are there characters, or is any of the tech? Are you starting to have some favorites?
Well, let's see. Serpenter Khan is gone now, all right, officially. So I can say that I'm going to be sad not to draw him anymore because that sort of got my, if you look at him, it's like it plays into that organic thing, that monster, nonsense sci-fi stuff. Like I know that a lot of people aren't thrilled with the zombie mutant stuff, but I have a lot of fun drawing that stuff. Um, like
They're
I
fun
like
to look at.
yeah, it's
I
it's
like
fun.
looking at your zombies.
It's
Like
fun.
like Kevin.
I remember the mandate early on was because this is Skybound, right? To not make them look like Walking Dead zombies. I remember that.
Ah,
I remember that being the one of the big things.
interesting.
So that was fine with me. It's like I'd rather do like I don't know, like you guys familiar with the film Planet Terror?
I
Grindhouse,
see
Robert
that.
Rodriguez.
I
That's
I
the sort of
see that. I
stuff.
see that in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff that I like. Just that gross, bulbous, pussy, stupid stuff. Um,
Chris, can you talk about your tools and techniques? Because some pages, I'm positive I'm looking at ink from paper, and some
yeah,
pages I think I'm seeing digital inking. And before we pressed record, you mentioned you have a drawing table.
yeah.
How do you draw GI Joe, and how have you drawn your comics?
It how I draw GI Joe depends on how much time I've got. Um, like I said, I'm a slow guy, so if I can, I will do things traditionally. But because of the specificities of, you know, the licensing aspect of things, like I said, that sort of stuff slows me down, like with vehicles and perspective and all that stuff. So a lot of it is done digitally. Unfortunately, if I could, I would do it all traditionally. If I had all the time in the world, I would.
Why? What's better about doing it analog on paper?
Well, you've got the tactile feel of things. You've got the finished product that, if I can wax poetic a little bit, I made this, with my hands, with my two hands. I mastered these tools and I put this on paper, and this is art, you know. Plus, I've got something to sell if the time comes. But really, really, I mean, I just love that tactile sense of pen to paper. Just feels good.
You're inking with pens, with brushes.
Brushes and nibs and yeah, some tech pens if I need to be more dead with the line, like on backgrounds or whatnot, or vehicles, straight edges, that sort of stuff.
Right, right.
The creator that followed you after your first arc, Paul Pelletier, was inked by somebody else, so by Tony Cordos.
Right. Nice guy. Met him. Finally met him.
Was there ever temptation or a thought that speed yourself up to get an inker on board, or was that never going to be a possibility?
I have actually talked to Tony about it.
Ah.
I met him. I met him in October at a show in Memphis, and we were sitting next to each other. And I raised the possibility, but I'm such a narcissist that I don't know if I could ever actually let anybody else do it, because that also means I have to pencil tighter, and I don't
Mhm.
generally do that. Like my finished product is basically me drawing in ink.
Would you be interested in going the other way, inking a penciler or finishing someone's breakdowns?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know that I don't know that it would look any good. But that is, it's always fun to put your own put your own stink on something, you know? Ultimately, one of the things that Joe used to say was that, you know, if you're not inking yourself, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Wow.
You lose all control over your stuff if you let anybody else touch it. And I agree.
Wow.
I agree with that because I've had inkers before, and I've rarely liked the result.
Wow.
In terms of that analog versus digital as well, you're saying that digital is much quicker. It's interesting because I guess there's the tool and there's the undo, the undo button and all of these kind of things
Yeah.
that are in digital that can make the process quicker. But is there also a temptation to keep on zooming in to the
Oh yeah, yeah.
to the fine detail and spending a lot of time on a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter kind of bit of the page, which you
Absolutely.
never see on?
Absolutely. And let me correct you real quick. It's not quicker.
Okay.
We fool ourselves into thinking it's quicker. It's easier, I can say that, but it's not
Huh.
quicker. At least not for me. Because of what you just talked about. You can zoom in, you can really get in there. And if you're working at, 600 DPI, you can really get in there and draw stuff that's not even going to show up on the page when it's finally
Mm.
printed. And that is something that takes a lot of getting used to and figuring out. Like if you look at when did I start doing digital stuff? I want to say that it was Stream, maybe. I was actually working at 600 DPI, and the detail was just getting lost because you can get such fine stuff in there. So eventually, what I did was, lowered that DPI to like 400, which is, you know, still good, but it forces you to sort of pull back on what you can actually put down.
Yeah, there's no temptation to get overly meticulous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And digitally, I tend to size my pages at print size. So I'm more aware of what's actually going to show up on the
Mhm.
page. So if I was working like if I had a file size of 11 by 17, that all that stuff's going to get lost because it doesn't translate the same, you know?
Hmm.
I think it was David Sedaris who was comparing the writer David Sedaris who was comparing the difference between typing a one-page letter in a typewriter or doing it on a word processor, doing it in like Microsoft Word,
Mm-hmm.
because you know when you're done on the
Yeah,
typewriter, and you also pull the page out and you're done.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like, yes, there's the like back key with the white correction ribbon, and you can fix some mistakes as you're going, but it's a very different mindset.
yeah. It really is. And eh, I really hate digital stuff. I really do, and I realize how hypocritical that is saying it, but it is very easy just to, undo something. Whereas, when you're working traditionally, you can't necessarily do that, and that becomes part of what makes that page. Is you work with your mistakes, right? And I think digital work tends to lose its humanity when you can just delete something or go back and fix it. But I'm also like a curmudgeon and think that the old ways are the best ways. So I don't disparage anybody doing digital work. Let me get that out there. I understand. Obviously, I do it. So,
Yeah. But it's like the difference, everyone went bananas about MP3s and DVDs, and now people are saying, yeah, but when you listen on a cassette tape, there's
yeah,
something a little warmer.
yeah,
There,
yeah.
there,
It's more,
there's,
it's more human,
yeah,
Art is
there's something
inherently
lost.
human. So,
Chris, can you talk about your schedule a little bit? You had 5 issues on and 5 issues off, and then
oh, okay.
it was almost 5 issues on. You are drawing an issue right now, this month that we're talking. I mean, a page a day. How many pages a week? Are you heading back to like 5 issues in a row?
You're asking the wrong artist for a strict schedule.
Okay.
Yeah. So 5 issues. I think 5 issues for that first arc, right? And then Paul came in and did the next five, and I did the next four. And like I said, I guess this is going to be the theme of this interview here. But I'm slow. I'm a slow guy, and I get behind easily. And that is why we had that. What was it? Issue 314, the last issue that
Yep.
came out.
Mhm.
Has 315 come out yet?
Yes,
Or
I'm
no?
holding it
Yes.
in my hand.
Oh, okay.
Came
Um,
out Wednesday.
oh, awesome.
Yeah, you guys reviewed it just before this, right?
Yeah, that's why we were struggling for time. We're like, oh, we have to finish talking about this so that we can actually talk to Chris. Um,
How hard are you guys on me this time?
we enjoyed it a lot. We didn't have it. I don't think we had any real criticism of it at all. It was an interesting issue in terms of it sort of tying things up in a bow. It sort of really sort of marking the end of that first 15 issue mutant saga.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting and different issue from that perspective of it sort of marking
I'm trying to
kind of.
trying to remember exactly what's going on in that issue.
It was the one with all the ninja handsets that we had to go back and forth with a lot.
And
Remember, they're standing around.
and the four Joes with the floating coffin wash up on the beach.
Oh,
And
The
right,
lady in the
right,
bikini
okay,
calls 911.
right.
And lots of mutants popping heads. So
Oh, that's right.
lots of
That's right.
lots of crowd for you. Lots of crowd scenes of various mutant armies all sort of lining up.
Yeah.
So
Some-
lots of characters on a page.
Some
That
good,
was a
some
fun
not so
issue.
good.
They're all good.
Let me see here. Let me pull up the PDF I've got. Ah, that's right. Yeah, okay. I remember.
I like the heads popping. We wouldn't get away with that so much in the past, right? But boom, they're all just popping along.
Yeah.
My question about your timing and your schedule
Yeah, sorry.
no, that is a neutral question. I am a happy Joe fan. If good artists draw every issue, and Skybound sure gets good artists, and if there's a fill-in issue and it like makes sense and the book stays on time, I'm a very happy Joe fan.
Yeah.
I'm sort of asking in broad strokes, without asking how long are you sticking around. It's sort of like, can we expect another 4 or 5 issues from you?
Yeah. Yes.
Cool.
I would love to do a nice, good run on this book.
Okay.
Now, what that actually entails, I don't know.
Well,
We'll see.
So as a comparison, in previous decades, an artist might draw a book for 2 years or 5 years, and maybe
Right.
there were fill-ins and maybe there weren't. But the expectation on artists is very different now. There's
Yeah.
a lot more drawing involved, and maybe also conventions to sort of see fans or sell art. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily expect any artist in 2025 to draw as many pages or as many books as Marvel and DC artists were drawing in the 70s and 80s. And
Yeah.
certainly when someone is inking themselves. And there has been this real push in the last 20 years from editors to get someone to draw 3 or 5 issues, and then someone else to draw 3 or 5 issues, and hopefully that first person comes back. And then maybe that second
Yeah.
person comes back and they alternate, and there's consistency.
Yeah. And
And
that seems to be the case so far
Mm-hmm.
between Paul and I. If I don't get me wrong, if I could, I would draw them all. I hate losing work, but at the end of the day, it is a business, and the thing needs to get out, right? The issue needs to come out. So while I would love to take my time and do every issue to the best of my ability, that's just not a feasible option. It's a production, so things need to come out. And I do think, yeah, you are right. The thinking on it has shifted in the last 20 years or so, for the most part. But I do think that it could be tweaked a little bit better, like the monthly idea is a is tough. Like that's the last sort of vestige of that era. And you know hitting a monthly book is, with the kind of art that comes out these days, it's I really don't think that's a feasible thing. And eventually I think that'll change, but we're still sort of antiquated uh, when it comes to that line of thinking.
And when you had the 5 issues off with Paul Pelletier doing the 5 issues in between your arcs, it was that time largely then working on the next one, or were you doing other things, or did you have some time to decompress and recover from that initial 5 issues?
Mostly I take that time to just sort of, like you said, decompress, laze about, take a vacation. I probably shouldn't. But it also depends on where Larry's at. If
Mhm.
he's far enough ahead to where I can get going. But I know just after one issue, I need like several days of
Yeah.
just, decomposing, as I call it. So,
It is tough. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's a lot of drawing really detailed things, right? And I know I'm going backwards in the interview a bit, but I don't think people always understand how hard it is when it's like, okay, you need to draw this vehicle with these guys in
Mhm.
it,
yeah.
and you have to get
Yeah,
yeah.
that's tough normally,
Mhm.
but we're also talking about a licensed property. So things have to be, at least 90% accurate to whatever the license calls for. So
Mhm.
I think that's the toughest part of it, is that this stuff has to mostly match what the toy line is putting out or has put out.
yeah, there's this page in the new issue in 315 where the Joes take this big elevator down into the pit in
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you get to draw a Jeep and also 4 Joe vehicles. It's not like you get to draw the Wolverine, the tank with
Right.
missiles, 4 times. You have
Yeah,
to draw it and 3 other vehicles, and they're all weird. Wonderful. They're
yeah.
all weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And none of those, actually, if I recall, none of those were specified in the script.
Oh, right.
Larry
say,
didn't
Yeah.
specify any of them. I actually called in a favor. I remember for this page specifically, I was having a hard time laying it out and figuring out how to do it. So I called in my buddy Nick Patera to help me out, and
Huh.
I'll give him credit for this one. This one was him. I did the finish, I guess, but he gave me the idea for it. So he's kind of saved me on this one.
Oh, turned out great.
Wow.
this is Nick Patera, Pitarra, who's drawn some stuff with Hickman at Image.
Yes, yeah,
Cool.
he worked on Manhattan projects with Jonathan Hickman and is currently working on his own book, self-published book, Axe Wielder John, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
So is this like a thumbnail suggestion of how about this kind of layout for the page, that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, and then he comes up with his version of it, and then I take what I think works in that and put my own sensibilities to it. So
One of
it's a brainchild of both of us. But he helped
hmm.
me out a lot on that one.
One of my questions was going to be the your art rep is Felix Liu,
Yeah.
and that is sort of always for me is like a sort of a bit of a recommendation, some sort of badge to be worn that he's got a great eye for spotting sort of the best of modern comics talent. So if there's an artist that he represents that maybe you've not even heard of yet, but if it's on his books, he's bound to be a pretty spectacular artist. So to what degree sort of being part of that stable of artists alongside the likes of Nick, what beyond just him selling your pages, does it present anything to you?
Well, I didn't know Nick before Felix.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me rephrase that. Nick reached out to me, or maybe vice versa. I might have reached out to Nick when Felix was first toying with the idea of being an art rep. So it was a small group. I was part of that first group. Nick and I were.
Mm,
So, this is before Felix had all the bigger names now. I mean, if you look at the list now, it's ridiculous the amount of talent he's got there.
yeah.
But it was a small group early on. And to answer your question, yeah, it's cool. I don't have much contact with anybody beyond Nick, at least like as far as like formed friendships go. Like
Mhm.
I wouldn't ask anybody else in the group to do this really to help me out if I needed it,
Right.
and vice versa, I think. But yeah, it is, aside from, him selling the pages, it is nice to have a group of like-minded individuals that you can, because, you talk about this stuff with family members or friends and whatever, they don't get it. It's like, oh, you draw
Mm.
pretty pictures. Good for you. But, these are the guys that really, the guys and gals, I should say, that really get it. They get
Mm,
the turmoil, the hardships. It's like being in the trenches together.
yeah. we Were you part of the group that went out to Japan and sort of came back with all of those Japanese art materials?
Yeah. The first
Oh
time.
wow.
I think they've done it again since. But
Hmm.
yeah, that was fun. That was a fun trip.
Great stuff. We sort of skipped past a little bit about how you got onto the book. So we spoke to Alex Antone about from his point of view, and one of the things that he called out was that unknown soldier, our fighting forces short story that was a little bit more militaristic, which sort of showed that you could do the military adventure story. But from your point of view, what did it look like actually beginning this journey? How did they reach out to you, and what was it that made you want to say yes?
Let's see here. At the time, this was what, like 2 years ago? When did we actually start working on this, Diana?
Oh, I think it was more than
Like
uh,
three at this
two and a
point?
half. Yeah,
Okay.
2.5, 3. Yeah.
So I was kind of at a crossroads in comics where, again, I'm a slow guy. I'm a slow artist, so that was hurting my reputation quite a bit with DC and Marvel and kind of anybody else. So work was kind of dry for me, and I was thinking about making a change and jumping into animation. So I was all set to do that when Alex, out of the blue, just emailed me and offered me, or asked if I was interested, I should say. He didn't necessarily offer it flat out, but he asked if I was interested. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know the first thing about this book or this property. I don't know. Shit, really. But, I needed something. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see. I can tell you, I had no idea the reaction that we were going to get to it.
Mm,
I had no idea what Skybound's plans were as far as marketing goes. I thought this was going to be, no offense to anybody else that's worked on this in the past, but I thought this was just going to be another rinky-dink IDW thing, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I'll do it. I could use the work. And then you guys blew it up. The fans really dug it, and then I was like, I had no idea. I really had no idea. And actually, that informed one of my decisions to do it digitally. I didn't think that, pages would sell from this
Right.
because I didn't think that the market was there.
Oh,
Ha ha!
Chris Mooneyham.
Yeah, well, like I said, I had no idea. I had no idea what this was all about. So, lessons have been learned. The issue I'm currently working on is all on boards.
Huh.
So I do it when I can. Um, but as far as I know, Riley Rossimo is the one that put me up for the job. I think he recommended to Alex that Alex look at my work and see if I'd be interested. So shout out to him. I owe him a drink, I guess.
I gotta say that as a fan, which I'm as nerdy a fan as anyone else, when I got to see the first art, which was, a long time before you guys got to see it, when I first saw it, it just blew me away.
Hmm.
That's nice.
It really did. Well, it did, because it's just we've got art on the book has gone up and down through the years, but when I saw it, it had this, I want to say, like, Serpentor Khan, he'd looked, pretty scary before, but now he looked menacing. And it just had the perfect match for where I was hoping the book would go. And it's a direction that the book hadn't gone in a while. That was, when I first saw that was when I know, they're taking this super seriously.
Yeah.
Hmm.
My approach to it is just because it is based on a toy line, it doesn't have to look like a toy line. Comics should be comics. Let it be a comic. Get all that stuff that you love from comics. I mean, the early stuff did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go back and look at the early or the 80s part of the Marvel run, and they treated it like any other comic.
Yep.
They didn't do it just to sell the toys, right? So,
Yeah, not the team working on it, no.
yeah. I mean, obviously, they did do it to sell the toys, but they didn't treat it that way necessarily.
No.
And that's kind of my thing. And maybe I'm wrong, but part of me thinks that it helps that I didn't have any relationship with the property before, because it didn't influence me, right? So any of the stuff that came before didn't influence me, and I could bring my own sensibilities to it. Now I get shot down a lot, but I can still bring what I find interesting to it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, particularly with this, this first arc that you worked on as well, with the mutants and stuff, you really needed that grittiness and the layer of grime kind of attached to it. If that was being drawn in the kind of the cleaner, quicker style that we were kind of used to, it wouldn't have had that same oomph to it.
All right. And let me state again, I don't mean to disparage anything that came before.
No.
It's
People.
just different, everybody's got their own sensibilities and their own style. I think that while this, isn't a book that I would have gone after, I think I do fit. I think I bring something to it that not many people have seen in a while, at least.
Yeah. It was great. Yeah.
I don't know how much of that is just, braggadocious on my part. I hope it's not coming across that way, because I don't mean it
No,
to.
it's
No, definitely not. No, not at all. So a lot of people, when they're looking at your art, they are sort of seeing in the Venn diagram sort of that Joe Kubert influence
Oh yeah.
there. I just wonder if you can talk to that. To what extent is that just your natural style versus Joe teaching you one on one versus you kind of leaning into that in terms of this military book specifically?
I think it's all of the above. I mean, had I not been taught by Joe and Andy, I don't know that I would. I mean, when I first got to that school, my biggest influences were Jim Lee and,
Mm,
Lionel Yu. So I don't really see a whole lot of that in what I'm doing now. But yeah, I remember, Adam and Andy, specifically Andy, growing up, his X-Men stuff, his Batman versus Predator stuff, which is so awesome.
yep.
That stuff really influenced me. But it was also in that Jim Lee. Andy was doing his Jim Lee stuff back then, you know,
Yep. Yep.
and so that really spoke to me. That was hot when I was growing up.
Do we detect any Jordy Bernay in your work?
I do like Jordy. I don't know a lot of Jordy Bernay. I've
Okay.
got I've got a few of the Torpedo volumes, but
Okay, but he did a whole run of Jonah Hex.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But beyond that, I'm like, aside from the Torpedo and Jonah Hex, I'm not all that familiar. But if you look at his stuff, you can put him in the same class as Joe,
Right.
Mm, yeah.
stylistically. It's
Right.
just that organic flow to things.
When I'm thinking of your art, I'm thinking of so many shadows and even the scenes that are daytime, like something in the back of my brain, it's sort of like nighttime. It's like they're obviously not, right? Like the sky in
Sure.
Pensacola is like peach or light yellow, but the scene with in Destro's castle, I'm thinking of all these shadows and
Yeah.
a lot of spotted black, which is a big difference from some artists of the last 20 years who don't spot blacks at all in the inking, and they're leaving space open for color artists to do whatever they do.
Yeah. And I don't like that. I don't like that idea.
Okay, and there's this, and Hama has talked about this, like chiaroscuro, sort of this older fashioned art style where, and it's like because of the limitations of color printing and printing in the 40s and
Yeah.
50s and 60s, where the artists had to draw these like bold black lines and like would draw shadows and would draw core
Right.
shadow and reflected light. So the question I'm building up to is when you got to GI Joe, because your work is so much about shadows and textures, and because your work is so much about the organic stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
bodies and clothing, right?
Yeah.
Did you consider drawing GI Joe with a different approach when you sat down to draw GI Joe? Did you think, oh, this does require a shift from other things I have drawn?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, what you're talking about, as far as the way comics used to be done, I mean, it's basically you're color proofing your comic, your art, right? So that even the worst colors aren't going to obscure or obfuscate the work, the actual storytelling and what you've drawn, right? And that was another thing that I learned from Joe, is color proof your work so that no matter who's doing your colors, good or bad, they can't really mess up your work. And I realize that's kind of disparaging to colorists, but
I think in the 60s, I think in the 50s and 60s and 70s
yeah,
and 80s, that's a reasonable generalization
yeah,
to make. There were color artists who were just doing it quickly because it had to get done, who weren't
yeah,
necessarily trying to make statements with their color.
yes, yeah. I think you're 100% right on that. But also, you know, my approach is, it's like the blacks in the work. It's about setting a mood. It's about making it dramatic. And GI Joe is dramatic. It's a soap opera basically with war or action. as far as I can tell. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
No, I
Um,
think we agree.
so my big thing was when I was looking at older issues, I was noticing a severe lack of that. Even in the original stuff, there's not a lot of it. I mean, who was the artist? Herb Trimpe? Was he the guy in the beginning?
Yeah.
The very first, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe like that first era is where you get the most spot blacks in there. But I was noticing a lack in it in the IDW run and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff before that. And personally, that's just not how I work. And I figured that there's a reason that Alex is asking me to do this. It's because he wants me to do what I do. And I don't know that I would be comfortable just leaving things open. I don't like trusting other people to convey my work. I am of that old school mentality. I mean, as good as colors can be, I still think that there's not too much out there that I dig color wise.
Have you spoken to Francisco Segala, who is coloring GI Joe? Do you communicate? Do you
Yeah,
include
yeah.
any notes or
Oh yeah.
requests?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Constantly. I generally tend to let him do his own thing because that's what he's there for, right? To bring his own
Mm-hmm.
thing to it. But if I have specific notes or corrections or things need to be clearer, then I'll definitely have something to say. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little mean about it, but he's a really good sport, and he's a workhorse. So I try not to have too much, especially if I'm running late. And I can't say that I'm disappointed with anything that he's done. I think his stuff has elevated it too, because I think he complements it well. He complements my older school style with his color sensibilities and the overall way he goes about them.
Yeah, well said. I would just repeat what you just said. I can't believe that a GI Joe comic looks like this. Because uh, this color approach is so different than what has come before, and I would like lots of different approaches. This one, that he's both sort of desaturating, but also using like digital approximations of
Yeah,
Venday dots, but then also he's like changing his palette every scene,
yeah.
or like back and forth between scenes.
Sometimes that can be an issue. I remember the first issue. I remember keeping coming back to him with desaturate, 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 and it took a while. It took a while for us to get on the same page. I guess not that long. It took an issue or two, but I had to really hammer that home. It's like pull it back, you know. And one of the problems with the dot pattern thing is that it adds black to the color, which can obscure things, make things a little muddy. So we definitely had to find our own language for each other. And yeah, he's Italian, so yeah, English is a second language. So there's that obstacle as well, trying to get him to understand what I'm trying to say or trying to convey, and vice versa. Yeah,
You
but
guys have figured it out pretty well.
yeah,
You
yeah,
really have.
we
Now
absolutely
the
have.
yeah. Yeah. And he's the one thing I'll say, well, not the one thing, I'll say a lot. He is so accepting of anything.
Yes, he really is. Yeah, like I said, sometimes I feel like I'm being mean, and he just takes it. And you know, the fact that he takes it makes me think that I can keep doing that. But he's a really good collaborator.
He
He
is.
he really is.
He works with you. Yeah.
Yeah,
You can say, "Hey, fix this," or "Hey, this needs to happen." And generally the answer is, "Okay."
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's done within the day.
He doesn't take things personally. He's not like me. I take things so personally, and he just goes with the flow. I mean, he's got other books that he's working on, so it's like he knows he's smart enough to not let his personal stuff get in the way.
Hmm. And I guess sort of, an unstated kind of thing here is that the colorist, more than anything else, is there to kind of make the line work look as good as it possibly can. So,
Right.
that's very much what he's there to do, is to kind of work with you and not against you.
Man, he's gotta deal with the diva.
Well, it's not all like that. But I will say, in the first issue, remember, as he's Italian,
Yeah.
so he will just color, and he'll use reference if you give it to him. But if not, he's going to do his best. So sometimes you realize, it took me a while to realize too that he's Italian, so he does not know the color of American military uniforms,
Right.
because it's just so it took a while also to be prepared for. No, we need to get this to him ahead of time.
Yeah.
So because he's like, all right, I will completely recolor this whole page.
Yeah, and have it to you
And-
within the next 5 hours.
Yeah, boom, done. And it's just, it helps. And all teams have people of different personalities in it, and they need them. Chris has to stand up for how he sees that page. So it's not so much being a diva, that's how I see it. That's how, because it's not just the pages when you're drawing and interpreting a plot.
Right. It's the intent
how-
behind them.
Yeah, and how they
Yeah.
all flow together too.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look at the book as a whole.
Yep.
So I think Francesco gets that. Okay, I'll go with where you're going. So it's good that you have different people on the team who have different attitudes, and because if everyone was all the same, I don't think the book would be as good.
Right.
Mm.
Right. I do think that that's part of what sets us apart
Mhm.
from previous stuff. Is it's like everybody kind of cares about the final product, and it shows. I think it shows.
Diana mentioned the specificity of some of the uniforms, and then there's one particular issue, I think it's 302, with the funeral scene there. That seemed like an enormous undertaking across the whole of the team to get the details of that particular scene laid out exactly right, coloured right, described right by Larry and all the rest of it.
I think that was one of the no vehicles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But still one of the most difficult sequences to
Mhm.
draw, because you can't half-ass that. I mean, it's a comic, sure, but you don't want to disrespect anybody, and
Mhm.
that's a very serious thing. It's like you want to get it right. You don't want to just, it's just a comic. Who cares? It's like people care. People care. So
Yeah.
treat them with the same respect that
So sometimes writers will ask their collaborative artist, what do you want to draw? Or what do you like to draw? And to some extent, tailor stories in that direction. And Hama has done that on GI Joe. Would you communicate to Hama or through editor Alex Anton, hey, these are some things that I really want to draw?
Um, I I've never gotten that question from Larry. I actually rarely spoken to Larry. I would, now that you pose that in that way, now maybe I think I could possibly get away with that, forwarding that
Mhm.
sort of question. But so far, no. He hasn't asked me anything like that.
Okay. Well, I would love to read an issue, and even if I never knew what issue it was or what are your preferences, but I would love to read an issue or a couple of issues where you got to propose some things that you wanted to draw.
I mean, the thing is, he's kind of hitting things already, So
Ah,
I battle scenes are good, tropical scenes are good. The things I would love to not have to draw are inside a casino, because that's a
well,
lot
it's
of
yeah.
that's not interesting to me. It's necessary for the story, obviously, but if I had it my way, that casino would have been destroyed a long time ago.
Man,
Wow.
I love the casino though, because of course they'd have a casino. Of course they'd have
I'm
it.
not
They're
I'm not talking, story wise. That's cool. That's fine. Purely from a drawing standpoint, it's like, oh boy. Okay.
But yeah, the inside of a casino is machines,
Yep.
tables,
Yep.
ladies in bow ties. Yeah, I can understand that.
Like, give
I
me,
can
give me,
understand that.
give me rubble. Give me death, carnage, and destruction. I can do that. I can
Yeah.
do that easily. And if I had more of that, maybe I would be more on time.
Well, there, we'll tell Larry to blow more stuff up. Let's just,
Like,
just
let's just
destroy
go
more
nuts, man.
things.
Let's just go
Yeah.
nuts.
And speaking of other things that are challenged to draw, I think it was issue 311, your first issue back from the five issues away. We didn't have like a precise scientific kind of analysis of this, but my strong guess was that it probably featured more vehicles in a GI Joe issue,
Oh,
different
yeah.
vehicles than any other issue that came before it.
I'm looking at that right now, and yeah, I'm sweating just reliving this. That was a lot. That was a lot. That was a lot.
Was this an issue that was a lot for you as well, Diana, where it's like literally a different vehicle on every page that you're trying to help with the reference and check? And
By 311, I didn't have to do too many checks once they were drawn, because what I've learned is I go through the plots when Larry gets them to me, and I'm not always great about getting it ahead of time, but I try and put reference material to the toy or the vehicle in our little reference Dropbox, and I try and get as many angles as I can. Carson at 3D Joe's really helps with that.
Yeah.
But there's others as well, and all the different ways. If I can find that drawn in the comic before too, I'll slap that in there. So that one I do remember. It took me 2 days to get everything there. 2 days of just pounding it full of stuff. Another one was just all the various different types of Vipers.
Yep.
But yeah, when it's something like that, it just took me a chunk of, it wasn't so hard so much as I knew I had to prepare ahead of time. So by the time, that all got dropped into Chris's lap, I was like, woohoo, my job's done.
Yeah, I don't recall having to ask for much more than what you had already given me on that one.
Yeah, I think I got most of it in. So I try and have that so he's got it. And once he's got it, I know he'll get it. Because
Yeah.
he's really meticulous and good about drawing them, per what he's got. But yeah, I can imagine that must have been pure hell for someone who's like, I don't necessarily want to draw tons of vehicles. I mean, it could be worse, Chris. You could be on Transformers, and
Yeah,
that is
I
a
know.
really tough book to
I
draw.
know. I remember talking with my buddy Gary Brown years ago. He was a classmate of mine at Kubert School as well. When we were first like breaking in, we were talking about like nightmare projects, and we both agreed that a teen book would be the worst thing ever to work on, based on our own sensibilities.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the most successful book that I've worked on happens to be a teen book. Not only a teen book, but like the biggest teen book with the most vehicles and the most characters. But yeah, I just found that kind of ironic, I guess.
But you do so well on it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it is a lot of fun. I hope I'm not coming across as like sour on this, because it is a
Oh,
lot of fun.
definitely
It's
not. No.
challenging, but it's challenging in the best possible way,
Yeah.
where it's like it forces me to really think and get better at what I do. And like I can't look at any of the first 5 issues I did of this. Can't. It's just awful to me.
Oh no.
And I'm starting to get that way with this last run. I'm looking at 311 as we speak, and it's just, oh God, so many problems.
For a bit of balance, I'll add that I went back and reread those early issues again just a couple of days ago in preparation for this, and was just taken back by how striking they are, and what a visual treat they were. So I think if you're sort of complaining about your art, you're probably an audience of one in that group.
I think so.
Well,
Actors don't watch their own movies
Yeah,
a lot of the time, Chris. Yeah.
I'm somebody that thinks that, like, as an artist, if you're happy with your work, you might as well quit, because there's no room for growth
Mm,
at that
mm,
point. My whole thing is I just want to be better. I just want to be better. And, sometimes hearing poor reviews, I mean, not everybody's going to like it, right? That's a given. You can't expect that. But if there are valid criticisms, then, yeah, take it to heart. See if there's any truth to that, and you know, work with it. Try to make it so that they can't say that again.
mm.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good mindset.
Prove them wrong, I guess.
The other thing about GI Joe is that any given issue, the next issue could be a completely different thing again, different cast of characters,
Yeah.
different location.
Yeah.
This run has been a bit unusual in terms of it being such a long story with such a prolonged through line.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested and excited to see, what comes next, where it will go after the mutant saga. But for, as well for you as an artist, I'm sure you'll be just given a whole different set of, I don't know if challenges is the right word, but a different sort of set of parameters as to the kind of story that you might be drawing. Certainly, I guess one with fewer hordes of mutants.
I mean, I don't mind all that stuff. Like I said, that was the stuff that, like, as many of them as there were to draw, they're fun to draw. I mean, I could go nuts on them, and I didn't really have to follow any licensing stuff.
They didn't have to be on model because they're all unique.
Because it was
Yeah.
my model.
Yeah.
For the most
Did
part.
you base any mutants on anyone you knew?
Did I? I don't think specifically. No.
Okay.
Stylistically, like, again, looking at 311, that battle scene, I'm looking at it and realizing how 90s a lot of their armor and weapons are. Like there's a bunch of cable stuff. It looks like, or X-Force Extreme. It's like I wanted to get that feel in there, which is so ridiculous, but fun.
Yeah, going back to, I think it was the splash page number 1 from 302, if I'm remembering correctly. I wondered, there was this mutant standing on a hill, and we were kind of being introduced to the aftermath of that bomb and Cobra Island sort of turning to a whole mess. I did wonder if that particular mutant might have been inspired by the mutant leader from Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, absolutely. 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 Let me see. Let me pull this up real quick. You're talking 30. Yeah, oh, yeah. Yep. Yes. Absolutely.
Validation. Hooray.
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say that I set out to do that, but when it started coming together, I was like, you know what? Let's just lean into it. And there it was. Yeah, look at that stuff. What a mess. What a mess all of this is.
No, it's
Oh.
fantastic. Stop.
It's meant to be a little bit messy. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be pretty.
Well, what's wrong with all you folks liking this?
I like it.
Maybe we can split the difference, Chris. Maybe we can say that we like the first 5 issues, and we still like the most recent 5 issues, but we're also looking forward to
what's next. Yeah, and so am I. I think, to answer something that you said just a few minutes ago, one of the things I do like about these last 9 that I've drawn is that it's pretty much stayed with the same characters. So, if you go back and look at 301 versus 315 and you look at the same characters, you can see how much more comfortable I am now, because I've gotten to draw them enough. Like, to the point where I could say that, hey, this is the way I draw this character now.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, if you look at Jim Lee's stuff in, like, those first couple issues of Hush, like, you look at his Batman in there, and then you look at his Batman at the end of that story. Very different. You know, it's
Hmm.
very different. And that just comes with figuring it out along the way and finding what works, what doesn't, and what you're comfortable with. And I don't know, that's all part of it. That's part of the stuff I like. So if it does go back to that, every issue is different. I'm a little worried about that. I'm a little worried about keeping things consistent.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if I'm creating that impression that I'm probably describing it quite right. It's not necessarily that every single issue is different, but you
But
get
every
but
few
between like particularly
issues,
between
yeah,
arcs, you can get a very different type of story. So comparing, say, 313 to 314, it's night and day. A
yeah,
completely different story of like all out war with mutants versus a small insertion mission with a handful of Joes and not really, and only really one Cobra character to be seen. So you can get from one issue to another because
yeah.
some quite sort of different stories.
Well, that's another thing that's sort of changed in comics. We're in the area of long form arcs, right?
Mm,
Whereas, if I'm not mistaken, GI Joe has just been one long arc. It's just continuous, right? Where one thing ends, another thing picks up, and there are threads started, 20 issues ago that have been building up to now. I don't think that's really done anymore. And I think that GI Joe is probably one of the last books to do that.
mm,
So you could have those single issue stories. You don't really get single issue stories anymore, from what I see. And that's kind of a sad thing. Like you can't just randomly go to a shop and pick up a random book and get a whole thing. You have to pick up everything to
mm,
get to that point and finish it, right? And
Mhm.
I do like that aspect of this book is we could probably still tell a whole story in one issue if Larry wanted to.
mhm, for sure.
Yeah, and he's done that
Yeah,
before in the past. He has. Yeah,
yeah.
and he'll probably do that again.
It's
So,
old school comics, and that's my
yeah.
jam, you know? Comics should be comics. They shouldn't be we shouldn't be trying to be movies. We're not movies. We're
No.
our own unique thing.
Hmm.
But you said you did want a long run, and that's very exciting to hear because I look at my shelf of Skybound comics, and I think of long runs, and I'm seeing these giant compendiums of Invincible and Walking Dead. It's
Well,
the very
let me
definition
okay,
of a
let
modern.
me clarify there. A
I'm winding
long
you up there
run
slightly.
a long run for me, I don't think I've done more than 17 issues
Uh huh.
of a book. And that was Five Ghosts, so that was my own book, you know. So anything past that, I will consider a long run.
Mm,
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll do this for as long as people have me, and as long as, I don't get bored or Larry doesn't get bored of me. But,
Tim, how many issues did Shannon draw?
Oh, I don't remember precisely. I think it's like 90
oh my God,
Maybe.
or 85.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Close to
that's
100.
that's a lot. That's a lot. That takes some real stick-to-itiveness. And I'm also somebody who gets bored easily, very easily. But this has managed to keep my interest so far.
Oh, good, because I like your work on the book.
yeah,
I
good.
do, I do. And, I think with such a huge team, there's probably someone, a whole bunch of other new stuff to keep you going
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd be happy to be known for this, you know,
Oh,
Mm,
Hmm.
as far as like
see.
looking at one's own legacy goes. Like that's a nice thing. It's a well-known property, right?
Yeah.
With a very well-known writer. And if we can do good work together, yeah, absolutely. I'd rather that than be on some random book that, some big book for a short amount of time that nobody's going to remember ever. I mean, I don't, this is me just sort of pontificating on life and whatnot, but I don't have kids, my work
Mhm.
is my legacy. So I want to leave behind the best thing I can, and so far this is the best thing I've done.
Wow.
Wow, that's great.
It's amazing. Yeah. I guess because
Yeah.
imagine, doing a variety of different, projects and work in the past. Some of those you will have felt, were more successful than others. Some of those you felt just have connected more with the audience than others. And when you're like at a convention, what is being brought back to you. And I'm, pretty confident that no matter what you do from now on, anytime you're at a convention, you're gonna be seeing piles of GI Joe comics to sign and people asking you for GI Joe sketches and so on.
Yeah, well, that's starting already. I don't do a lot of conventions, but I just started doing them again. And in October, I was in Memphis, and that was the first convention I had done since COVID, pre-COVID, and
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the reaction that I was getting for this book. It shocked me. It shouldn't have, based on what happened when the book actually launched,
Hmm.
but it's really nice. It's nice to get the feedback, and I
Mm,
appreciate it. And it makes me want to keep doing it, That really helps. Getting
Hmm.
feedback like that really helps. It means I'm not just doing it for nothing.
Would you go to more conventions? Are you headed out to San Diego this year or next year?
I've kind of realized that I don't really care for like the big ones.
Big ones, yeah.
Yeah, like they're just too, ugh, they're corporate. It's not about comics.
Hmm.
It's about, it's about what comics have created for other media, and that makes me sick.
Mm.
Do you think
I-
you could be tempted to a Joe specific show like Joe Fest in June?
what is that? Georgia? In
Yeah,
Yeah,
Georgia?
that's
Georgia.
I was in Orlando at the end of January, and somebody was telling me about that. And I have a brother, my younger brother's out in Georgia. So, hey,
Hmm.
maybe not sole reason for doing it, but, I would be interested, sure.
pass that along to Ed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got a bias, but if you were if you went to that, then your name should be pretty much the headline guest. Larry is due to be at Joe Fest this year, this June.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be in Memphis too, and I was really looking forward to actually meeting him. But I guess he was because I think New York Comic Con was like the week before, and he got sick.
Mm.
So
Right. Yeah.
I missed my window, which is too bad.
Well, maybe if you just sneak down to Georgia in June,
Hmm.
unannounced.
Oh yeah.
Pop up, go incognito.
Yeah,
And
with
then,
a droopy mustache and a beret.
yeah, and glasses. Little
Yep.
ponytail.
Smacking everybody who questions me,
Yes. Perfect.
calling them
Do you-
fools.
So, Chris, if you called yourself a perfectionist, and it sounds like drawing a page can be hard, or knowing when a page is done can be hard. Do you have a lighter standard for convention sketches?
No.
May I recommend an egg timer?
Yeah, actually, so in Orlando, I was talking with Adam Kubert, and he recommended to me the Pomodoros technique. Have you guys heard of this?
No.
Where it's like 25 minutes on,
Hmm.
and then you move on, right? You
Hmm.
set your timer for 25 minutes. Like if I'm doing layouts, right?
Oh, you're talking
25
about sort of
minutes.
tasks, like you do
Yeah.
the dishes for 25 minutes, then you go pay your taxes, and then you go,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. And then later, after you've completed a certain amount of those, and if you haven't finished, you come back to it and give it another look, see what you can do. But he says it's helped him because he's got the same problem I do, where he just wants it to be awesome, right? And who cares? Who cares about anything else?
Have you tried this for GI Joe pages? Did you try it at that convention?
I am just starting to employ it. I am just starting to get back on the book right now. Um, so I haven't really started on layouts yet. And layouts are where all the work is. That's where all the real work is, and all the thinking and all that stuff. And that's where Oh gosh, I shouldn't say I'm the slowest because I'm slow at all of it. But I'd say that's the most time-consuming part is getting the right layout for the page. And even then, not all of them are going to be winners. But
Can you talk a little bit about vertical panels? Because when I think of sort of the like prototypical comic book page, I think of 6 panels,
yeah,
two and two and two, and maybe the one on the left is a little bigger than the one on the right, and then vice versa.
sure,
Or I think of a 9-panel grid like Watchmen, or a 16-panel grid like Dark Knight Returns.
right,
Or, like sometimes artists who come from animation are doing a lot of rectangular panels. It's a little bit more like
right.
storyboard.
Widescreen
Yeah, or like
stuff.
like Brian Hitch on The Authority. It's like, no,
Right.
every tier is a single panel. Panel is as wide as the page.
I actually kind of blame Brian Hitch and Mark Miller for ruining comics
Is it them, or
because
is
of
it
that.
everyone who decided to do stuff like that?
Well, see, and the thing is, I've never actually read The Authority, so I don't know if they do it in The Authority, but I do know what they do in The Ultimates. And, they present it like a movie, and that's cool. It fits. But yeah, you're right. It's everybody else. It's like Christopher Nolan ruined movies because everybody started copying Christopher Nolan, when in reality, it's everybody else who doesn't have their own idea.
So I'm looking at the new issue of GI Joe,
Okay.
315. I'm looking at page 3. And this is the scene where Destro confronts Cobra Commander in chains in his castle, and
Which one? This is 315, you said?
yeah,
Okay, sorry. I just want to be on the same page as you.
literally. And so at the bottom of page 2, the camera is, sorry, it's not a film, but finger quotes, the camera is hanging from the ceiling looking down. There's a strong diagonal. Destro's cast shadow as he heads out. And in
Right,
effect, it's an upside down panel.
right.
And then page 3, you have this inset panel. Panel 1 is actually sitting over panel 2. And panel
Yes.
1 is
Yeah.
this narrow, tall panel. And then the rest of panel 2 is more like a square. I mean, I guess it's technically the full page, but sort of down to where
Right.
panels 3 and 4 are. And I don't know if asking this question is interesting or even helpful, because everyone's got sort of different proportions, how strong their drawing hand is, the mechanics of their arm, like what reference they're most recently thinking of, other comics, artists, movies, photographers.
hmm
But when I look at your pages, I see these occasional, more often than occasional, these vertical and narrow panels, and then jumping back to page 2, where Cobra Commander is lunging forward, but the chains are holding him back, lunging
Yeah.
forward at Destro. This vignette panel where there's no border and the background sort of demands to be the white of the page.
Yeah.
So, can you talk about this sort of less grid or standardized sort of division of the rectangle of your pages?
Well, um, you bring up the 16-panel grid that Frank Miller did on Dark Knight Returns. That influenced me a lot. I studied that book very hard. And like in that book, even the stuff that you don't think fits into that grid still fits into that grid, right?
Right, right.
So that's a big influence on how I formulate a page. Maybe not as much these days as it used to, but I try to keep that sort of idea in mind. Like if you go to page 4 after that, you can you can still sort of see where the eye is supposed to go, right? And you can still break it down into panels that way if you wanted to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is Destro and the Doctor walking into the room.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's your panel 1. Panel 2 is the, showing, Baroness and the medical staff or whatever. So it's like all that stuff sort of, oh man, I really don't know what I'm talking about here. And any answer I give you is going to be like pompous, like I do. Um,
This is good. This is good because I mean, I don't expect everyone to be able to analyze their own work, because
Yeah.
you might be analyzing other work and then making conscious decisions, or you may be internalizing it and just doing it, and
Yeah.
and one doesn't know how to put it into words, and one doesn't have to, right? You should draw the book. You shouldn't do podcasts every day. Mark and I should do podcasts every day. So even that much is interesting and helpful.
I think that I'm not like an original artist either. As far as I'm concerned, all I do is steal from other folk. Better,
Yeah.
better folk. So
A synthesizer.
yeah,
You're
sure.
a synthesizer.
All right, that's nice. That's a nice way of putting it. So I know what I like to see, right? And I know what kind of shots I've seen like that. And without like flat out copying somebody, like tracing it, I do my best to put my own spin on something like that, I guess, for lack of a better term. So, like, I know that a lot of vertical panels, like on page 3, that first panel, I put quite a few vertical panels in this book. Not this issue necessarily, but in the book in general. And part of that is just because I don't see a lot of vertical panels in comics these days. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm just not looking at the right stuff, but I try to make a comic that looks like a comic. I don't really prescribe to the movie thing, like the Brian Hitch and Miller stuff, or any of the uh, people that are aping that sort of cinematic stuff. I think the closest I get in this issue is page 5 when that Iron Grenadier is giving the tour of the battlefield, right? Like that's kind of cinematic, but ultimately, I just want my comic to look like a comic.
I think in this way, you and Hama are a good fit, because he is not writing in a, post 2000 quote decompressed quote
Yeah,
writing for the trade style. He's just writing 20 pages, and then the next month it's 20 more pages, and the next month is 20 more pages. And to
yeah,
some extent, I think he and editors are saying like, well, what's happening within every 5 or 6 issues? But as you said
right,
before, it is
right.
one big story.
To Tim's point is it's interesting just flicking through any particular issue is the kind of variety of layouts, and the where there is a more conventional sort of panel layout, it's more the exception than a rule, as an
Yeah.
observation.
Ultimately, I try to make it look interesting, right? And do what can't necessarily be done in any other form of media. So,
Yeah, it's a comic. It's not a movie.
yeah, exactly. And while there is, something to be said for that style, it's a lot easier to compose. And I guess I
Mm.
love hating myself, and coming up with all this. But I think it's worth it, man. It's a cool looking page. Or, in theory, it'll be a cooler looking page than just 5 vertical, or, or not vertical, horizontal. Um,
Where we're
and
slowly zooming in or out.
yeah, it's like let's make it interesting. You can do anything on this page, so let's do everything on this page.
And I've seen on a handful of occasions some of Larry Hama's plots, and they're always fascinating to see compared back to the final produced result, and also
Hmm.
fascinating to kind of see what is it within, because they are to some degree relatively bare bones, a paragraph describing a short couple of sentences sort of describing the beats of broad indications of what people
Right.
are saying with
That
but
Marvel style of writing.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But what within that you don't necessarily see as the reader of the final comic are some of like the things that Harmer calls out, or the allusions to like classical art or sculpture or that kind of thing, which is just really interesting to see. I wondered, like, for example, in this issue, there's that panel of Baroness under the veil on the table, and I wondered whether like
Oh yeah.
something like that did Harmer like call out a reference to like a marble veil effect, like the Tromdoy technique, that kind of thing? Or,
No.
or have you got other
No.
examples of like an unusual reference that he might have made that you've incorporated?
Not in that panel or page specifically. He has, I think he has. But no, that panel's all me. All me,
Okay.
baby.
It was quite
Um,
striking. I thought, yeah, that is something. This is an allusion to like marble sculptures or something. But interesting.
No, if you look at that portrait in the background, if you
Mhm.
really want to see it, it's basically a reference to the first Highlander movie.
It's not
Fantastic.
nothing from Five Ghosts.
No Five Ghosts in this book. I try to get I'm a nerd too. I try to get as much fun stuff. I think what was the issue where Destro is just tearing up the place?
313.
313. RoboCop is my favorite movie.
Right.
So there's one panel in there where he's like the targeting system and whatnot. I just,
Yeah.
was like, hey, any chance I get to throw a RoboCop reference in there, I'm gonna take. So stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, I think we could do this all day, but we do have to bring it to a conclusion somewhere. So let's end it there. But thank you so much to both Chris and Diana for your time. Is there anywhere on the internet that you would like to point people to find you, or anything specifically you would like to promote before we wrap up?
Nah, you could probably check me out on Instagram if you want, but I don't really care.
Do you have any conventions coming up, Chris, where fans who might want to get a signature or sketch
Not
could?
not on the books as of yet. I'm thinking about doing Heroes Con in what is that, June?
And we're trying to trick you into making a surprise appearance at a GI Joe convention in Georgia. Also,
Oh,
in
that's
June.
right. That's
But,
right.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to any of that, but I will say that if the book is running late, then I'm not going to be able to do any of that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's kind of on me.
Well, hopefully you can do it all.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice if I was a responsible adult, right?
Oh.
Okay, so perfect. Thank you for taking the time. That was great. If you want to find us on the internet, you can find us at talkingjoe.co.uk. Tim, where can you be found?
With my creative partners, video essays on TV and film at our YouTube channel, at Atomic Abe. I own a brick and mortar comic book store outside of Boston. That's Hub Comics. And I write about G.I. Joe at my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So just before we go, Tim, let's just have the rallying cry and then we'll sign off.
Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast!
There you go. Bye.
Thanks so much. Laters.